Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Pele Yoetz. Today is almost going to feel like a crossover between Pele Yoetz and Kosher 2.0, and I'm actually very excited to teach today's class. Many of you who have followed Kosher 2.0, you know about my journey in health and wellness. You know my passion behind, teaching you guys all the things that I've learned. I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to be a doctor. I don't even claim to know everything about every illness. But I don't know why. This is like, I love to learn this. And today's lesson, it's funny. When I was going through that initial journey of healthcare, ironically enough, a lot of the things that I was learning, you're going to find in today's lesson, which is so ironic because, it's so nice when, science catches up with the Torah because really the Torah and the sages, it really does, solidify that, what we always hear the comments of, follow the teachings of your Rav. And this kind of solidifies that. And I personally can attest to the truth behind it. There's a lot of things that, that many naturopaths will tell you. And if we were to eat the diet that we were supposed to be eating, the way we're supposed to be eating, it would look a lot different than the way that many of us eat. And sometimes if you really look at the mainstream diet, it's whether it's kosher or not kosher, there's one thing that we all have in common, and that is this overindulgence of all kind of meat and delicacies and wine. And so we're going to get into today's lesson. It's actually very short. And I'm going to try to keep it short because you know me. When it comes to health and wellness, I can run away. So it says, in most places, meat is scarce. Now, it's funny because if you're living in the chutzla arts of chutzla arts, kind of like I am, this statement is true. So for many of you who are living in very religious neighborhoods, this statement is not true. There's meat in abundance. What are you talking about, Devorah Esther? But if you're in somewhere like I am, we actually talked our local market into bringing it in. And so we have a lot of Yidden around here and very little to pick from. So, I truly do understand the statement. It says, especially when there are many pursuers of the finest cut and they will grab for it. Each person pulls it to himself and causes much controversy. In the end, the stronger individual wins. However, in this matter, one can identify those who are righteous and humble. They withdraw their hand and are satisfied with whatever comes to them, or they do not even buy meat from the butcher in order to avoid dispute. Instead, they buy fowl, which is like a chicken, and it says, so detestable is quarreling. In any case, if it is possible, it is always preferable to buy fowl, for one is safe from many possible wrongdoings, as I will write in a later entry of Shochet. So now, it's funny because, what do you see like a lot of clean living? What do they say? Chicken and fish. So already we're getting to go up against this like distinction between, the red meat per se and the meat of the, turkey, chicken, fish. But it says someone who is capable of virtuous self-sacrifice for the sake of Creator will only eat meat on Shabbat and days on which Tachanun are not recited. In the work of Chesed L'Avraham, Mayan 5 Shar says 6, it says, know that the suffering of the grave does not come except as punishment for the enjoyment that one has had at improper times, and there is no joy without meat or wine. Now, again, today we really can appreciate those words because we see the effects of bad diet. And believe it or not, even if you're getting a lean cut of meat, it is not, believe it or not, and we're going to put what the Rav is saying aside. Coming from a naturopath perspective, excessive meat, excessive wine is not good for the body. Now, granted, wine does have its benefits. So we're not talking about the occasional glass of wine. And there are times where meat can have its benefits. But, I think the problem is that we'll have meat for lunch, meat for dinner. Tomorrow we'll do it all again. And tomorrow and the day after that, we'll do it again. Oh, and by the way, it's a holiday, so let's do it all again. So it's almost like, when do we not do it? Like, when does it become special? What's the big deal, I think that if our previous generations could look at the way we were eating, they'd look at us. I don't know. I'd be curious to know what they thought, because for sure they did not eat like the way we eat today. And they did live much longer lives. And believe it or not, there is, the Torah and science actually, they match up, especially with the damage that's done to the liver. And believe it or not, when that liver is not clean, you have that fatty liver and all that. Believe it or not, scientifically, they will tell you it leads to a bad midot. Very interesting, very interesting. You really should, for your own well-being, look into what the sages are saying about how to eat and when to eat. So it says, all the days in which tachanun are permissible are not times of celebration, and therefore the eating of meat and drinking of wine is prohibited. It is only permissible if one bought meat for Shabbat or it was left over. Otherwise, it is prescribed, and a person will be punished with suffering of the grave. See there, and again, we just mentioned why that is. So it says only an individual who is from a healthy family can fulfill this. So it says today we have an excuse. We say that our strength has failed. And it is sufficient if we are careful not to increase celebration to reveal social gathering and everyday dining. We should eat to the satiation of our souls with the right intention, and all of our deeds should be for the sake of Shemayim. Perhaps HaShem will reconsider and will not deem it a sin. It is fitting that a man should fulfill that which is easy for him to keep. So I think, again, I think somehow we think, and I'm sure of it, that our generation, we have convinced ourselves that there's strength in numbers. So if we're all doing it, it can't be a sin. But the truth is, we run very specifically, and the creator of the world is telling us how we run best, how we can maximize our strength. And if you listen to the last lesson, again, we talked about the importance of why one should be doing something in their youth, because as we age, there is this loss of vitality that happens to all of us. And I think that process happens to us even sooner when we're not taking care of the vehicle that HaShem gave us. So I want, we've heard this. You've heard me say it. I'm sure you've heard other Rabbanim say it. We should be very careful about trampling over mitzvot that we see as quote unquote lesser. And I think that a lot of times people don't realize that the mitzvah of guarding your body and how you're, what you're putting into it, it's as big of a mitzvah as any one that you can think. And let me give you an example. Now, recently, I taught a shiur out in Great Neck, and I said, if you had an extra car and I had asked you to borrow it, because of the fact that I have many errands to run and no way to do them, and the only way to do them is if you let me borrow your car. And I took your car, and while I was running my errands, I was eating all kinds of stuff in the car and leaving the garbage within the car. You told me that the car runs on a specific fuel, and I put a lesser grade because it's fuel, right? And I let it go, and it was dirty and dingy. I never washed it. The tires, I didn't care. I got, that what my husband said, like that tire rash, because I don't care. I parked it. However, if I brought you back that car, if you heard, if somebody said to you, listen, have you seen the car you let Devorah Esther borrow? I mean, that thing is a mess. She's trashed it. So here it is, your car. I can only do my errands because you gave me this car to borrow, and this is how I'm treating it. So how long would it be until I expect that either the car that you let me borrow to do my errands, which I couldn't do otherwise, will break down? Or how long will it be before you take it from me? Has v'shalom. So this is the same thing. Our goof is the only way that we can perform the mitzvot in this world, right? If you don't have the body, you can't do what you got to do, which is to build that place in Gan Eden, right? The only way to do it is to be in the guf. So how long do we think that we're, how many, it's like playing Russian roulette. How long do you think we're going to go before things start breaking down? Or has v'sholom, that Hashem says, it's time for me to take that guf back, that vehicle back. This is the same thing. So you begin to see that even though we think that this is one of the least mitzvot, it's actually one, at least in my eyes, in my opinion, one of the greatest, because without it, we can't study the Torah, we can't perform the mitzvot, we cannot do anything. So, and don't think that because I'm saying it here in Pele Yoetz, that I can give the class in Kosher 2.0, that somehow I don't have a Yetzirah on this. Trust me, and all my closest gal pals know I have a Yetzirah on this. So I truly understand. But I do find encouragement in learning why I keep, why I should keep the strict diet that I should. And also knowing when is it time to cut off. So ideally, you want to have, a very clean diet for the most part. And then Shabbos now becomes special because you're looking forward, because you're indulging in that meat, you're indulging in those, those delicacies. And but if we're doing this all day long, every day, then has v'shalom, even what we put on the Shabbos table, it almost seems like, it's diminished, has v'shalom. So it really, we have to, I think, as a whole, as a community, we have to reevaluate how we think about food and its correlation to our service with Hashem. So we're going to finish up. It says, perhaps Hashem, we said that perhaps Hashem will consider not a sin. It says it's fitting that a man should fulfill that which is easy for him to keep. And our sages in Yoma 75b said on the verses of Shemot 16:8, that when Hashem gives to you in the evening meat to eat and bread in the morning, and it says the Torah is teaching us the proper etiquette, that a person should only eat meat at night. These matters all depend upon the nature of the person and require him to control his eating with deliberateness. So he says he must eat less than he has, and less than the degree of satiation. And he should not consume too much meat, and as a result, his flesh will rest secure. So again, I don't think, anybody should think that this is, oh my gosh, we have to go vegan. No. But I think what we have to keep in perspective is that not every meal has to be that we're stuffing ourselves till we cannot, take it anymore, and we're going to explode. And by the way, nothing of what was on our plate even remotely registered as nutritionally sound. It tasted amazing, but what was the nutritional impact? And for many of our plates, it's like zero. So we have to be aware. This is the only vehicle that we get, right? Despite what all the plastic surgeons will tell you, we don't get another goof. This is it. So we must give kavod to that which Hashem has placed in our charge. Very difficult, especially in this day and age, because again, if you remember, like the last lesson, because a lot of this was not instilled for a lot of us at a young age, much harder to change. And this is a perfect example of the last lesson, in the chapter of young man, where, when you don't grow up with this foundation, much harder, because now you have to rip out all the bad, building, the shoddy foundation, you have to rebuild. And it's much more difficult once you've already become acclimated and accustomed to eating in a very indulgent way. So, again, thank you for tuning in. It's a mitzvah to you, obviously, to learn. But if you'd like to be part of this mitzvah even further, feel free to send it over to someone you think it might help. And again, feel free to go through the Kosher 2.0. I'm thinking of doing, a much more in-depth kind of intro. And I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to do it like a live on YouTube, or if I'm just going to record the shiur. So if you have any thoughts about that, comment below. But again, I welcome your comments. Please be nice. Please be nice. I'm still working on myself, so please be nice. But I'm so grateful for all the well wishes in the comments and everything. So if you have any ideas or feedback, please feel free to comment on below. Thank you for everything, and I hope we'll all be together again soon. Bezrat HaShem.